My homie. She's probably doing stuff. Hello, welcome. Welcome to the second installment of our edible banquet series, our wild edible banquet series. My name is Nathan Hunter. I'm with the Bronx River Alliance, and I'm so excited to have Candace Thompson and Journey Binwala in the house, sharing with us an introduction to quick pickling and lacto fermentation. We've got a nice spread set up for you today, and we're excited to be live streaming directly to YouTube for all you who are tuning in virtually. Thank you for those that are here in person today joining us. Exciting to have folks who will be practicing all of these things we'll be learning today. And we encourage you to continue following this series as we go through parts 3 and part 4. Part 3 next weekend, all about wild seasoning. Following that, on the 22nd, we will have a workshop all about crackers or wild seeds and grains, which we're looking forward to. And we welcome you to come out to Concrete Plant Park on November 5th to have an in-person day with us and actually get to taste all the great things that we've been cooking together, together with our community in person at Concrete Plant Park. If you don't know the Bronx River Alliance, we are the stewards of the Bronx River. We do a lot all along the banks of the river as well as inside the river. We are just one program. The Foodway is just one program of what the Alliance offers. So we're excited to share with you all of our offerings year round. We're just finishing up our paddle season, but stay tuned. You can learn more by visiting bronxriver.org. And while we recognize we're providing this free programming today, we do encourage folks to reach out to your local Indigenous tribes to see how you can be supporting them best. This weekend is Indigenous Peoples Weekend, so we want to uplift the work of Indigenous folks all year, but especially this weekend, the things that are happening in the city, the easy ways that you can be supporting our Indigenous communities right this weekend. In particular, we have an incredible festival that's hosted at Randall's Island, and we encourage you to consider donating to the Indigenous Peoples Day Fund, which we'll link in this video so that you can make a contribution or share with a friend to start supporting our Indigenous folks. And we encourage you to investigate other ways to support our Indigenous community, including land back models, having conversations with your families around the land you live on and beyond. But today we're just excited to bring you a little bit of wild food from the Foodway and from other cool spaces around the city, and to explore great ways to preserve your harvest. So with that, I'm going to hand it over to our team, who is leading today's workshop, Candace Thompson and Journey Binwala. Thanks, y'all.
Thank you. I'll put this on Journey real quick. Can I do the honors?
Yes.
It's kind of like pinning someone for prom.
I know, it feels so special.
You over here, my lady. Hi, I'm Candace.
Hi, I'm Journey. Welcome.
Yeah, and I just wanted to carry forward on what Nathan was talking about with Indigenous Peoples Day. One other way you can support here in New York City, New York does not actually recognize Indigenous Peoples Day at this moment. And there is an initiative to ask the city, ask Eric Adams to make that a formal thing, that we acknowledge that Columbus Day should be Indigenous Peoples Day. I just want to name that I have this glove on because I hurt myself. I have a boo-boo. And so I'm rocking a Michael Jackson vibe. That's why. Yeah. So just so that's clear. But today we're going to talk about lacto fermentation and quick pickling.
Yep, so we kind of just picking back up from where we left off last time, right? We made some ale, we made some wine, and we was still in a realms of fermentation, so to speak, right? So this week we are moving on from that and now fermenting different things. But before we go, just to tap back from what we did last week, I wanted to show you guys, because you guys remember we did the wine and it's not ready, right? We say 30 days, but what I want to show you guys is right here. You see the fizz, the bubbles, right? That's a good indication that there's activity going on, right? And Candace, I need you to do me the favor.
Yeah.
If you can just like smell it and tell me what it smells like.
Oh yeah, that is well on its way to wine, for sure.
Okay, so we good. So this is just 30 days. So we have a couple more weeks to go before it will be ready. But at the banquet, right, it will be ready for the 5th.
Yeah. And so, you know, kind of continuing from the conversation of what fermentation is, right? It's a collaboration with microbes to change the nature of food, sometimes for preservation, sometimes for different flavors or different health benefits.
Yes.
And thinking about, you know, Journey just showed you the wine, you know, one of the kind of next progressions that we wanted to move into is talking about vinegar. Yeah. Take wine, take beer, add oxygen, you're going to make vinegar. Yes. Case in point, if Journey was to open that up and after it gets done turning into alcohol and just let it be exposed to air, it would become vinegar. Similarly, this is some of the beer that we had last time. I have put it in a jar, and when I wasn't putting it in my car, I have it exposed to air on top, and I even inoculated it with a little bit of apple cider vinegar from the store that's like got the mother in it, you know what I mean? And I'm going to let this sit. I've got this over it so that the fruit flies don't come for it. And in time, it will be vinegar, right?
Yes. So that's a great thing. You know, we're using the bacteria to do different type of tasks. We can use it for recreational things, right? When you're making your alcoholic beverage, you can use it for culinary, right? You need to use vinegar and all of its benefits, then you can do that. If you need to use it for health reason, enhancing your microbiome, enhancing the properties of your nutrients or medicinal property, fermentation is really great for that. So what I mean by enhancing is that every single bacteria that gets used in the process of fermentation has a specific job, right? And depending on that specific job, one of the main things they do is they're just going to optimize every nutrients and every medicinal properties. If you're using something that have medicinal properties, it's just going to optimize it. So it's going to be a lot more beneficial than it by itself. So that is a great way of using it. If you want to try making a vinegar, like Candace said earlier, you know, just take things off, let the oxygen, let the air come in. The bacteria that's in the air, Acetobacter, gets into the alcohol and then turns that into vinegar. So,
and you can even use it as a way to reduce food waste, right? So
yes.
Another really simple way to make vinegar is to just take like your apple cores. So this week, my CSA, it started being apple season. So this morning I had a blackberry apple Dutch baby, which is why my tongue is black. And I'm sure you were dying to know. And so I'm going to start taking my apple cores and putting in this sugar water. And then I'm going to let it sit and get fizzy, just like the wild yeast starter we made last time. Yeah. Once it gets all good and fizzy, I'm going to open it up to air and I'm going to make apple vinegar. Then I can use that in salad dressings. I could put it on my hair. I could put it, you know, all the places. Could you with a fox in a box? You can do it any of the things that you would with it, except for pickling. You don't want to use it for pickling because it's not a strong enough acid solution, but you can definitely put it in any of the things. Oh, you want to see it? And so same idea, right? Sugar and water, making an environment. And then the yeast that's on the outside of those apples and the sugar that's in those apples is going to make what would basically be a soda to start. And then it's going to become more alcoholic slightly. And then it's going to turn into vinegar.
Yes.
If you've ever had tepache, same process.
Yes. So you can't get to vinegar without that middle space of alcohol, okay? You need to pass through that first. I like the fact that she showed us how to do a base, like that's a starter of a homemade from scratch vinegar. If you don't have the apple cores, but you don't like to eat your apple peels and you're always peeling them off, you can save those and use that to make your vinegar as well. So any of your leftover things, you can use that, what do you call that, scraps, vegetable scrap, fruit scraps, you can use it to make vinegar with. Very simple way. An easy way that I like to make vinegar, I like to use dry fruit. So it's a little cheat. Dry fruit because you tend to have less accident of mold or bad bacteria developing than fresh fruit. So I dip into the dry fruit. So you could take like raisin, any dry fruit, right? The exact same thing. You don't need to add sugar because it's already, dry fruit already have a lot of sugar. Mix it into your water, stir it every day, checking on it and seeing the progress of it until it turns into vinegar. But that's a long process. You give it a couple of months. It's now like, oh, in a couple of weeks, I'll have vinegar. No, it takes a while, but it's worth it because we tend to think that this is the only available apple cider vinegar, meaning like there's no other version. You can create your own. You can create a grapefruit cider vinegar if you like, or a peach cider vinegar. Like there's other stuff that you can do that's going to bring amazing flavors to your food and anything you make when you're making it yourself, because you get to do other fruits. The only reason why we have just apple cider vinegar and no other alternative in terms of that particular vinegar, because it's business. They pick apple and that's their thing. So they give us apple, but it doesn't mean it's the only things you can use for making that. That's what I wanted to say about that. But what are we starting with?
So let's get started. So we're going to teach you how to make some quick pickles or fridge pickles, right?
Yeah.
So just to differentiate, right? We're going to talk about pickling with vinegar, making a vinegar brine, putting vegetables in it, putting it in the fridge, eat it, delightful. And then we're going to talk about lacto fermentation, which is a bit more of a time process. So one, we're going to be working expressly with vinegar and flavors, spices. And then one, we're going to be working primarily with salt. So much like last week when we were fermenting with sugar and water, now we're going to be building a different kind of microbial community by using salt. But first, quick pickling. So some examples of what quick pickling can look like. This is a shrub. So this is white wine vinegar and maple sugar and cherries and some sumac that I threw together on June 29th. Look at that. I labeled it. Congratulations, me. That's been sitting and waiting. Basically, all this is just now an infused sweetened vinegar. What can you do with that? Again, you could put it in salad dressings, all of that. What I'm going to do is strain it and put it in a glass, and everyone's going to have it with some seltzer, and they're going to have a delightful shrub. In this instance, sure, we can eat the cherries. I can chop those up and put them in something, but I'm actually in it for the flavored vinegar of it all, right? Like that's the goal here, as opposed to when we quick pickle something because we're trying to preserve the food itself to be able to eat later. I made these quick pickles last weekend while camping. So also, like, you can do this while camping, you know. These are just some radishes and some cucumbers that I threw in some apple cider vinegar and water with, what's in there? Goldenrod, anise hyssop, and some bayberry leaves. And they're definitely like a little bit, you can definitely taste that anise. That's what we're doing. This is not shelf stable. I want to clarify that, like, what we're teaching you to do is not canning. That is like the next step that you could do with this process. Right now, we're just putting some stuff in a jar with vinegar and putting it in the fridge and being able to keep it long-term without it getting funky on us.
Oh yeah.
Oh yeah. So to do that, we're going to show you how you make a brine. It is so simple. You're going to be like, why am I watching this? It's just this simple. So, you're going to do like 50-50 water and vinegar. You can do more vinegar than that if you want. I typically do just because it makes things kind of have a little bit more crunch, I find.
Personal preference.
Personal preference. What you can't do is less vinegar than water.
Yeah.
Don't do that. So I'm going to be filling this jar. I'm going to pickle two different things to kind of show you two different methods. First, I'm going to pickle some burdock roots. So here they are, already prepped and cut up in a little bit of vinegar water so they don't oxidize. This is what a burdock, when you buy it from the grocery store, looks like. I was going to forage them for us. I didn't find any that work. When you forage them, they don't look like this.
They don't. They don't.
They look very different than this. But we're going to take these little medallions and we're going to stick them in this jar with my gloved hand. And I have a fun thing that makes it easier. And I'm going to build a brine. Do you mind putting those in that jar for me while I build my brine? So with that, I'm going to do half and half
I'm gonna add more to it.
However, yeah, we can pack it in.
Okay.
Apple, do you need a glove too?
Yeah.
I got you, girl. There you
Thank
go.
you.
We're gonna do half vinegar and half water. So since I don't really know how much I'm gonna need in my cool little jar here, one of the worst things that you can do is like not pre-measure or not make enough brine or not have enough jars ready for all of your food. If we don't have to use all that burdock, I will eat the rest for dinner. So I'm gonna do just a smidge less than half water. All right, half water, half vinegar, boom, easy. I'm using apple cider vinegar for this one. You can also use white wine vinegar. You can use normal, just white vinegar, whatever you want.
Remember, she said white wine vinegar. So in the comment, right, if you can, just a quick question. How do you think we got the white wine vinegar? How did it start? Where do you think we got that from? Put that in the chat. I'm gonna see if you guys.
There's a clue there. And I'm gonna do, I did about a teaspoon of maple sugar just to add a little bit of sweet. I'm gonna do a little bit more than salt than that. And then in this one, I decided today that I would put some bayberry leaves in it. So these you can get foraged from the foodway. See, and when we talk about spices soon, that will all make sense. I was going to put some spice bush berries in it. So this is kind of almost like a peppery kind of situation. Ooh, if my thing will work. Yeah. Do you mind zip that in? And what else was, I was going to put Shizo in this. So Shizo is a plant that also you find that's pretty weedy that grows around. I see it in parks a lot. Let me see.
It smells amazing. I like the way it smells.
Oh yeah, for sure. And this is actually the color. Like, so this is another kind of shrub you can make with it that we'll have later. This is the color of it. Isn't it remarkable? Yeah. And so I thought maybe I would add, these are the leaves that I made that shrub with that I can, yep. And there it is too, that I thought I would add some. It has a great, I don't know, it's a hard flavor to describe. It can really be used in a lot of things, I find, but I thought maybe it would make our pickles kind of cool and purple. Yeah, I think those are the things I was going to put in this brine. So we're going to let this brine heat up. It needs to get like to a good simmer or a good boil. And then we're going to pour it over this jar and boom, we're going to put a lid on it. It's going to suck down with the pressure from the heat. Pickles. At the same time, I'm going to make another one that is more of a hot pack pickle. So that would be considered a cold pack. You're putting raw vegetables in a jar, covering it in brine. This one, I'm going to do white wine vinegar. And we're going to be pickling some mushrooms that I foraged this week at Donald J. Trump State Park. It's a tax write-off for him that it exists. And I think it is a place that the people should be stewarding because no one else can afford to do so. So while I was there foraging for garlic mustard seeds, I stumbled upon some puffballs and some little wood ears. And so we are going to see what it's like to pickle them. I've never done it before. It's an experiment. Let's find out what happens.
First time for everything. That's a good thing.
First time for everything.
This is why, doing this thing, like, once you know a technique, right, in terms of the ingredients to add, it's totally up to you. So if you know how to pickle, if you know how to ferment, right, even if you find something and you don't know how it's going to go to ferment or pickle it, give it a try. You just might find the next best thing.
Yeah. And I think really it becomes a question of texture. What I imagine might happen. All right. So for this one, same idea. I've done, yes. I can operate a butane burner. So I've put white wine vinegar and water. I'm going to add a little miso to it, talking about fermented foods. I felt like it was on trend. An amazing other fermented thing that I have no idea how to do.
But I do have to say, right, when you bring in heat, right, like with the miso, with the apple cider vinegar, because there's going to be a lot of heat, that's also going to kill the beneficial bacteria. But for this particular method of pickling, we're not after the bacteria, so it's okay.
Right. But that is, you make a very good point that like that is going to, and the same would be true, right? If you were to can, oh, this is brand new. Look at that. If you were to can, I'm going to put a little sesame oil in it. And I'm gonna put
Is
some
it
of that
roasted? Yeah, it is. Toasted?
toasted, yeah. And I'm gonna put some garlic mustard seeds in there that I also collected from DJT State Park. So garlic mustard is one of our amazing immigrant plants, very tenacious. It occupies most of our forest woodland. It is a prolific self-seeder. Yeah. So I was actually surprised that they were still kind of up. A spoon. Nathan, could I have a spoon? I was actually surprised to find some at the park still. But by collecting them and using them as a flavoring, I'm taking them out of the ecosystem and reducing the amount of them that can spread. So
this is how foraging helps to keep certain plants, you know, managing them, because the more you use them, then especially with the mustard, then the less over time is going to just be able to spread all over. I haven't been able to find the seed. See, here in the city, we just have the leaves. I haven't seen the seeds.
Oh,
yeah, I've been looking. I haven't stepped out of the burrow either, so maybe that's why.
Yeah, well, so it's a 2-year plant. And so the second year is when it puts up its little antenna of, you know, where the flowers grow on. And I love to eat the flowers too. All right, are you gonna turn purple? Maybe you're not. Let's try and add a little more and see. Probably if I had used, thank you. If I had used fresh, that would have been better, but I already harvested all my Shizo.
I see a little, but there's a little hint.
Yeah, a little hint. Well, we'll let it go. Maybe it'll infuse, maybe it won't. It's an experiment. That's kind of like we were talking about with brewing last time. What I really like about doing this is that, like, you know, every time you're kind of just playing with what you have and seeing kind of what kind of flavors you can make. So that's going pretty good boiling wise. And usually, again, this is the part that I would do in a sink. But I've got this lovely little funnel boy here.
I got it.
You got it?
Yep.
Okay. I love you, Journey. I don't want to hurt you.
No, you're good. I got tough skin.
Okay. And all I'm doing is just pouring this bad boy over top until you get to the top. And I might, like that. And I might want to just ladle some of my,
a little bit more.
Yeah, I might ladle some of my stuff in here. Boopy doop. Nicer if it's down in, but once we get it kind of set, we can jiggle it around and move stuff around.
Back.
I'm going to take a little bit of the Shizo out just so that it doesn't get too, figuring it out. All right. So I've got all my leftover brine. You know, if I was making more, I'll probably end up taking that home if I have a jar for it, and then maybe make another batch of pickles. And then over here, this is starting to go. So we've got the miso, we've got, and I'm going to let that count as my salt because it's going to be pretty salty. We've got white wine vinegar. We've got the sesame seed, or the sesame seed oil, the mustard, garlic mustard seeds, and some bayberry. Try and get that miso broken up in there. And it's totally fine and preferable and recommended to taste these. Yeah, all right, that's all right. See how this guy tastes? Ooh, I can smell that sesame oil. Oh yeah, all right, cool. So this is the difference. I'm not, you know, some vegetables you might put this in and like boil it for a little while so that the vegetables kind of cook if they're maybe a little hard or something that you want to be softer. These little BB puffballs that I got this week, I've cut them in half. And if you've never foraged puffball, here's an example of one whole. You want to always cut them in half to make sure that they are not an egg sac of an Amanita, which is a deadly poisonous mushroom. You're welcome, I did that. So I'm going to throw those in there. And then I have these wood ears that I also foraged. And I went ahead and pre-boiled these for about 5 minutes. They're nice and fresh, and now they've been kind of parboiled. We're going to boop, 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 boop. And I'm going to let them go just for like a minute in this hot brine. And then same idea. We're going to just put them in a jar. We're going to put a lid on that jar, and we're going to call it a day. And then we're going to put them in the fridge. And you've just made fridge pickles, 2 different kinds. Can you believe it? And if I was to set this down, now that it's hot and packed, probably this is going to seal down like it would if we were canning. It's not shelf stable that way, but it will kind of just create that vacuum lock because of the heat. All right, so the trick here is going to be doing this in such a way. It's always fun to do this stuff, not at your house. Let's see. Sure, if you have one, that would be neat. I want to make sure that I get my two different kinds of mushrooms a little mixed up with each other. And, you know, this came up last time when we were making beer too. You'll notice I did not, like, these jars were not boiled in a hot water bath, bless you. You don't need to do that in this situation. You're not going to be canning these and creating an anaerobic environment where botulism could grow. In fact, because it's largely vinegar, that couldn't even happen if it wanted to. You just need clean jars. You don't want to have anything funky in there. No soap, no old food, no rust. Nice clean jars is all you're looking for. And then you can put your foodies in them and move on with your life. Let's see, I'm getting close, right? Mm-hmm. Oh my God, they're gonna fit perfectly. I'm so excited. It's like nature wanted us to do it.
The math was mathing.
Yeah, it mathed. It mathed. Now we all watch as I try to obsessively get the last few mushrooms, maybe a little overfull.
That's right.
Hey.
That's right.
All right.
Nice.
Put this on here. Do. Quick pickles. Done and done. So those are going to go in the fridge. It's probably better if they sit for a day or two and infuse with flavors, right? And then I can open them up and I can start serving them out, right? I intend to try them myself, make sure they're acceptable. And then if you're interested in trying them, they will be served with the charcuterie board that I'm going to be making at our banquet on November 5th. That's it. Quick pickles. Anybody here got questions about how hard quick pickles aren't?
We have a question.
Yes. How do you know the difference between a puffball and an Amanita egg sac? You're going to cut it open. You'll, well, you didn't, but if you look at them soon, you'll see that they are pure white inside, like a piece of tofu. An Amanita puffball, when you open it up, it's going to have like a little bit of a line, like a gill, like it's going to have gills, or if there's anything inside of it, it's not just like fully straight white, don't eat it.
Oh, because they want to throw.
Yeah, so what it is an Amanita, it's literally like an egg of an Amanita that's about to bloom into like a proper parasol mushroom, whereas these won't do that. That's what they're going to do. The other thing about puffballs is that, you know, if you know what they are, right, they grow on a log and you squish them and the stuff comes out. They need to be entirely white. That's when you can eat them. Once you cut them open, if they're black or if they're like in process to turning brown or yellow, it's clipped.
Even just a smidge of, if you see a little bit of yellow, right? This is something you want to discriminate. You want pure white, not, oh, it's a little beige. Is this okay? No, you want it to be pure white.
What's the verdict? Right?
Yep. White.
Yeah. So yeah, quick pickles. We'll have some cool mushroom ones and some nice burdock that will go with the like crackers and ginkgo cheese and jams and all the other stuff that we'll have.
That is awesome. See, like back in the spring, pickling is really great at preserving the things that you like. Well, in the springtime, I love magnolia. Magnolia is one of my favorite flowers to forage in the spring. So what is this, May? No, April 23rd of this year, I made this pickling of magnolia flowers. And I love the pickling of magnolia flower. It reminds me, if you ever had sushi and you had like the ginger, the pickled ginger, well, magnolia flower petals have that same texture. It's a bit spicy, but not spicy like ginger. It has its own spice taste to it, but not as spicy. I love it.
Yeah, and it's beautiful and floral. Another thing that I love to make shrubs from.
Yeah.
Because like, yeah, you can eat the pickles and then you've still got this amazing flavored brine, right? So you're getting a 2-for-1 when you make these kinds of quick pickles.
The petals, you know, all of the colors is now into the brine. So that's a brine that you can also drink once you finish with using the pickle flowers. Okay, any
Cool.
questions?
I have a question.
Yeah.
So you said it's not shelf stable, but how long will it last? Like you should leave it in the fridge and then
If you leave it in the fridge,
forever.
yeah, I don't, you know, I would eat it within the next 6 months or so. It really, at least in my opinion, comes down to a question of texture. The things that could go wrong, if some of it's sticking out of the brine, right? Like if you lose some of the brine and you've got bits of it sticking up, those things might go moldy. If you pull them out and trash them out, you can use the rest of or compost them. You can use the rest of what's in the jar. For me, it's often a question of like that the texture will degrade over time. So like I have some pickled daylilies and chanterelles in my fridge. The chanterelles are like, they're definitely losing their color. They ain't looking as good as they used to. You know, it's time for me to finish that jar and move on with my hopes and dreams. But it's just really hard for me to let go of chanterelle season. So, you know, you can use your judgment. It's not going to kill you.
Yeah, and when you're making, it's always good to start small because you want to know whether or not this is something that you like, this is something that you want to do again. Because if you make a big jar and then you taste it and you don't like it, you put it in the refrigerator, you're going to forget about it. That's not the idea. The idea, start small. Ooh, I like it. This tastes great. Then think, what would I use this with and how often will I use it? If you're not going to use it that often, then just make a small jar. But if you're like, oh, this is good, I could use it a couple of times a week or whatever have you, then make a nice size to fit your needs. All right. That's what you want to do with this thing. Because if not, you're going to turn into a hoarder and you open up your fridge, you have all of this unfinished business staring at you like, is it my time yet? So be mindful of that.
And I think it becomes a question of like also figuring out how you can use these things creatively, right? You might make a pickle and it might be like, oh, dang, that is way too salty, or like, I don't really like that flavor. But if you mix it up in your tuna salad or you put it on another salad, like this is where kind of like the art of, you know, like cool cooking comes in, is that you can then say like, oh, this has this flavor, it would go good with this, right? You know,
Even salad dressing.
yeah.
You know, you want to make your own little salad dressing. You want to keep a little, take the pickling, the pickle juice out of your pickle, you know, put that in and then mix it in. And then you might be like, oh, this is actually a really good blend. So you just never know. And if you are detoxing, you know, that's really great. That's a great thing that you can eat during your time of detoxing or fasting, whichever one that you're doing. You can actually include this and it'll be really beneficial.
Lacto fermentation.
Lacto fermentation.
Let's move on. All right.
Okay.
Do I need to make you some room here?
Yes.
All right. You got it, boss.
I need boom. All right, guys. So we are going to move on from pickling to lacto fermentation. And we're going to set up for that. So just give us.
I can do it while you talk about it.
Okay, awesome. So lacto fermentation, or usually when people hear lacto fermentation, they tend to think of milk because it has the word lacto in there. But the lacto is not for lactose, right? We're talking about bacteria, bacteria that we're going to use to either preserve the food, enhance the nutrients of the food, or the medicinal property. Think of lacto like lactobacillus. Lactobacillus is a bacteria that we tend to use a lot, or that gets created a lot during the lacto fermentation. So when you do lacto fermentation, the bacteria colonies that you're colonizing, it's the lactobacillus. And I love lactobacillus because it has, that particular bacteria does a lot of things. One of the things that it does that I like to touch upon is if you're doing a parasitic cleanse, right? Because right now a lot of people are doing detoxes and cleansing. If you're doing a parasitic cleanse, lactobacillus is a really good bacteria that you want to have in your gut. Why? Because it helps with pushing out and getting rid of parasites. So bacteria don't just help with the immune system and enhancing other things, but they will also assist you in getting rid of parasites if there is something that you're trying to get rid of. So including that in your parasitic cleanse will be a really good idea. So what we're going to do is we're going to make some sauerkraut. Sauerkraut is really, really easy to make. You can use cabbage, right? So just okay. I'm not measuring, so I'm just doing by eye. I like to do a lot of things by eyesight because it gets me to work my brain and to remember how I'm doing things. So I can make sure that, what is it, eyesight, what is it, hand-eye coordination, all of that stuff plays into it. And I think it's always a good idea to work out all of our various sensories.
Yeah, I think there's a lot of people, you know, there's many people function different ways, right?
Mhm.
You and I, it seems, are the kind of people who don't like to follow directions. If you're a person who wants a very specific set of rules for what your salt ratio needs to be with your cabbage, it's very easy to do. And you can look it up online. A lot of people do it by weight. So they might weigh how much cabbage they have, and then they might do a ratio. If they want like a 3% salt ratio, then they add, you know, and there's actually even like online calculators that will help you figure out like, okay, I've got a pound of cabbage. I want it to be a 3% brine, add this much salt. Some people just do it by eye. Sandor Katz, who's kind of like considered like the like master of fermentation, does it by eye, by and large, from what I understand. If you want to weigh it out, you can do that. You can do it by tablespoons. A lot of people also, depending on what type of salt you're using, the one thing that can happen if you use a tablespoon is that sea salt versus like a very fine grained salt are going to take up different amounts of space in the spoon, right? So you're going to have a different amount of salt. So that's why if you really want to be like type A about it, Capricorn type A about it, measure it, weigh it and do it by weight.
Yeah.
Or follow your heart and do it the way we do and just guess.
Yeah. And just remember when you guess, right, that means that every time you make it, it's not going to be the same. So that's the thing with guessing. So if you want to guess, but you want to repeat the same thing each time, then you want to make sure that you pay attention to the amount with your eyes, right? Eyeball it and then do it.
Is my salt all stuck together? No, there we go. And let's talk, Journey, a little bit about the kinds of salt you can use. Can you use iodized salt for this?
Can you use iodized salt for it? So honestly, you can use any type of salt with it. However, if you want to be, you know, just for things that are better, I would prefer sea salt, Himalayan salt, anything within that. Iodized salt, regular table salts, those are not the type of salts that I personally will recommend because they are not the best salts out there. If you're going to make something, use the better ingredient, and sea salts better than iodized salt to me.
Because it's got a lot of minerals and stuff in it, right? So
Yes.
you're getting a lot of added benefits.
Yes, I don't want any salt that too many things have happened to it and things like that, but sea salt is very easy to work with. It's really good. So it's no problem. Now, when you put in salt, right, the next thing you want to do, you kind of want to, sometimes they call it massage it, right? A cool thing about salt is that salt does pull, it pulls water. So this is going to help us to create our own wine. So all I'm doing is just squeezing them, because the idea here is to make sure that the salt is everywhere and is drawing out liquid. Now, those of you guys that are out there, we have some cabbage, and other stuff over there, so you guys can kind of do it and follow along as well.
Follow
So you can walk out of here with your own sauerkraut. So it takes a bit of time, right? Because this is just what you have to keep doing. And if you have kids love this. You know, they really, really like this. And
Do you want another glove? Would that be helpful to you?
Yes.
This is where I cannot help you because yeah, I do have it. This is where I
Can you
cannot
do me a
help you
favor?
because
Can you
I
pull this?
don't have a functioning finger.
Thank
but
you. I'll pull this one.
Yeah, you got it.
Thank you. Yes, better with both arms. Okay. So typically this is what I'll just do and just keep doing it to create brine. And as you guys can see, it was fuller, right? I put a lot of carrots, but I like carrots.
Yeah, it'll be a nice Halloween pumpkin-y sauerkraut. If we throw some of that turmeric in there, do you want me to chop some of that?
Yes, actually, I didn't put it in because
It's still whole.
Yeah.
I got you. How much turmeric do you want? Like a whole knob like this?
Okay, the whole knob works, yeah. Okay, just continue to squeeze. So I want you guys to see how watery, see that? The juice that's coming out, right? That's the brine that we're making. So we're gonna use the juice of these vegetables to kind of create the brine. That's what you wanna squeeze so we can get as much water as possible. That's the intention.
And I don't know about you, Journey, but sometimes I let it sit. So I'll give it a massage and then I'll wait like 30 minutes because in that time, all that salt is kind of pulling moisture out of it, right? And so we could even like, once you get done massaging it, if we have everybody else kind of come do theirs, we can come back to it, right?
Yeah.
And
that's what we're gonna do. I just wanted to mix it in really well.
This is not the best knife for me to chop this with, but I hope you don't mind a crude.
No, I don't mind. I'm not looking for perfection.
Good, because I'm a very flawed human.
Because once it's served, and nobody looking to see how well everything is chopped.
Right.
Yeah, this is good.
Do you have a more formidable knife that I can chop this a little better with?
I got it.
Thank you.
Okay.
Yes, thank you. I think we're good.
Yeah,
We're
yeah,
just
we're good.
I'm just getting her some turmeric.
Yep, we're gonna add it in there and then we're gonna let it sit.
This is gonna be a beautifully vibrant sauerkraut with this turmeric. Definitely, y'all, if you use the turmeric in your kraut, wear gloves unless you want bright yellow hands. If you want bright yellow hands, then today's your day. Ready?
Yep.
Is this acceptable, my lady?
Yes, it is.
All right, there you go.
Thank you. Ooh, yeah.
Oh, sorry. Where do you get turmeric as a root? That's a great question. Nathan, where did you get your turmeric from? From the local store. Yeah, I know that my farmer grows it and gives it to us every year in our CSA. I think a lot of places you can get it as a fresh root, right? And do you have a reason why you prefer using the fresh root over the dried version?
I like the fresh root only because it's fresh. You know, the flavor to me and smell is different when it's fresh than when it's dry. There's this turmeric taste and smell that I don't get when it's in a dry form. I get something different. So I do like the dry form, but when I'm making sauerkrauts, when I'm making even like tea or juices with turmeric, I'd rather use the fresh because I want everything.
I want everything.
I want everything.
Because I want everything.
I am greedy. Yeah, so this is good. So now we're just gonna let it sit. We're gonna cover it up and let it sit for 30 minutes.
Cool. So now we can, how's it going, everybody, with your krauts? Starting to break down. Yeah, so we can talk about, sauerkraut and kimchi are kind of considered like lacto fermentation 101, right? Because the cool thing is that how thick the plants are, they create enough of their own water to make a brine themselves, which we're going to see happen here in about 30 minutes. If you were to do something like cucumbers, right? You obviously don't want to mash your cucumbers into mush. That's not appealing. So what you would do instead is you would make a brine that you add to it. And that salt brine then is what sits around the cucumbers and creates the lacto-friendly environment. Again, that is you're going to want to look for a ratio for that salinity. So often I think it's about like a 3%, right? Brine that you would do. Again, I'm not a math person. I go online and I'm like, okay, I'm going to fill this bad boy. I need a gallon of water. Tell me how much salt I put in. I also, much like we do with brewing, I usually let my water sit out overnight so that all of the chlorine can pull off of it, so that I can make sure that I'm creating a good environment for my bacteria to grow.
Just like pickling, texture is big in this space, because if you're a texture person and you don't like mushy things, then certain plants, certain vegetables just won't work because they'll turn into mush, and you're not gonna like that texture in your mouth. So just be mindful of that. And just like she mentioned with the cucumber, because it can turn mushy if you do it with the squeezing. So just anything that might be mushy, do the brine separately and then add it onto it.
Yeah. So like if you wanted to do carrot sticks, cucumbers, I have some sunchokes I'll show you later that we did. I remember when I first started lacto fermenting, I tried to do things like lamb's quarters leaves.
Yeah.
Ooh, texture wise, totally not.
It will do its thing, but it's just not going to look appealing, and it may not even taste the way you can imagine. So it's like, I don't think this was a good one.
Yeah. So you want to it's a question of kind of thinking about what types of foods you're working with.
Yes, absolutely. So you want to be mindful of that. Okay. So if you guys are finished, we're going to set this to the side, right? Ooh.
Oh, that's not from you. That's from my pickles. We've made a whole mess.
You know what this reminded me of when I lived there? Just reminded me like peeing in the bed when you're a kid. And then you're like, oh my God, we're getting in trouble. I got to get the stuff up.
Here, look, I can reduce your anxiety about that. We'll just cover it. It's fine. Cool. And while we're waiting, what should we talk about now while we're waiting for your...
So while we're waiting, we're going to move on to the next thing that takes less time.
Oh, yes, the leaves.
So, so when we're talking about fermentation, right, we just showed you guys like what we do with vegetables and things like that. Ooh, I'm going to need a board. Cutting board might be it. We're talking about fermentation with vegetables and things like that. Now I'm going to show you guys fermentation with herbs, right? How would you ferment an herb?
It's had turmeric on it. Do you want me to go rinse it?
No, turmeric is anti-inflammatory, has good properties. So if it touches on this plant, it's okay. So what I have right here, this is, what is this again? This is stinging nettle. Okay, this is stinging nettle that I have right here. This is fresh stinging nettles I picked yesterday, and I only picked the top. So there's no more stings. It doesn't sting anymore. So that's good. You guys will find some actually blackcurrant on the table that you guys can use. So when we are doing fermentation with herbs, there's a little bit of a difference than using vegetables. We're not going to create a brine. We are not going to use any salt. We're not going to use sugar. We are only going to depend off of the juices and the water from the plant by itself. So once you have your herb and plant, what I usually like to do, I don't think I'm going to do it here. I like to beat my plants up first. Give it a nice beating. So what would a beating look like? So just imagine.
Spoon, or you want to use my burdock as a
I'm
rolling
gonna use
pin?
burdock, yes. So
I knew there was a reason I didn't chop all of it up.
So this is just, right? And the reason why you do this is because this is a leaf, it's really thin, right? The juices are not as outright, so you want to bring them out, and you do that by just picking up, right? Pass the burdock around. So I might flip them, right? I'll flip them and then just, so what I'm doing this is getting the juice out, making it a little bit more moist, right? Even when you feel it, I feel a bit of moistness into it, right? So that means juices are coming out, which is good. Now, not all leaves are juicy, so you're not looking to have a whole lot. You're just looking to have as much juice that the plant can actually give you. So it's whatever the plant has, that's it. Don't look for nothing else. Do not add any water. We're like, oh, how about just add a little bit of water? Don't add anything, just the plant juice by itself. I'm gonna stop here. Pass the mint.
Anyone need the burdock smacker?
So now, right, that I did that, I'm just kind of, so the next things you want to do now, you want to roll them. Right, we want to roll them. So rolling them again is about just getting some of that juice out. So I'm going to do it with one hand because it's not a whole lot. So at first, right, like it's spread out like that. So what I'm doing, I'll show you what I'm doing with my hand. I kind of like grab them this way, right? Because then I can just roll.
Making a cigar like.
Yes, like you're making a cigar, exactly.
And do you find, Journey, that when you use plants in the spring, that maybe they have more moisture in them than the fall, or do you find that they're like the same plant can have different types of moisture? I don't know. I'm curious. It's the first time I've ever experienced this, so I'm curious if there are differences that you find sometimes.
Well, the temperature, well, the season definitely going to affect that, but for the most part, a plant that is not moist, that doesn't have a lot of moisture, it's just not going to have a lot of moisture. So you're not going to find they one season or 1 year, it's like, oh, it's juicy. It's just not going to be that. If that plant is naturally drying, you're just not going to have it. But if it has a lot of moisture, some plants like holy basil, it gets juicy real quick. And it's like, oh, wow, it's really wet. Outside of that, no.
Okay.
Really not. But what I do find in the fall, plants tend to be a tad bit, has more starch, so they're a little bit sweeter than their spring counterpart. That's the only difference that I see. But that makes sense because there's less food in the wintertime. So that means that in the fall, a lot of plants, especially the root vegetables, will have more starch, more sugar, so that we overeat in a way, right? So that in the cold of winter, our body can use the sugar to give us energy, especially when we can't find food on a daily basis. That's living in nature, and that's how nature has it done that way. So like your burdock root, if you forage the burdock root in springtime, it's going to be a lot bitter. If you forage it in the fall, it's going to be sweeter. So nature knows what it's doing. So you just twist, roll, and you just kind of keep doing this. And as you guys can see, the color is darker, right? Because there's a lot of juice coming out, and also because it's breaking up a little bit, oxidation is also happening at the same time. And you can take the time and smell your plant and see if you you smell something, because this, what it does too, it makes it more fragrant. So an herb that when you first pick it and you break it, I don't really smell nothing. When you do this, you might find like, oh, wait, it has a smell. I didn't know it smelled this way. Oops. So you just roll. You can just do a gentle roll. It's really, really, really simple. So after that, I think I'm good in the juices section. So what you do, this is it, okay? This is it right here. This is nettle, and nettle, it is an amazing herb. In the herbal world, it is known as a nourishing herb because it has a lot of nutrients, has a lot of minerals in it. So if you're someone who deals with issues with minerals, you have anemia, nettle is great. So by fermenting it, you just,
What you need, salt?
no, the jar, no salt.
Oh,
By fermenting it, you are optimizing all of its amazing benefits. And it's also really great for people who have allergies. It does help with allergies. It's also really great for men, prostate health, mainly the root, but getting some of the leaves is also good, because then it's like the whole thing. And the way that I use nettle, I like to use nettle as a nourishing tea that I can take on every day to ensure, like, one, it's keeping up with my iron, two, I'm getting nutrients in case there's some days where I'm not eating right or I'm not eating at all, but I know, like, oh, I had some nettle, I have this, I feel okay because I had something. So all you do, you put it in a jar, and then you close it, right? So what you want to do from this point forward is every day you want to open it, air it out. Okay, you want to open it, air it out. You might even roll it a little bit more if you like. You can even roll it more, right? Get more, mix more, get some more juice out, and then you put it back, right? And you do that daily. And as you're smelling it, you're going to see by like day 2, by day 3, the smell is changing. It's going to be, it could be a little bit sweeter. It can be a little bit more sour. Your scent is going to let you know when to stop. You get to decide when to stop. You can see, like, by day 3, you know what? I really like the way it smells, so I'm going to stop the fermentation now. And when you decide to stop the fermentation, all you have to do next is take it out, spread it out, and let it dry. Okay, you spread it out and you let it dry. Now, this is fermented nettle leaves. So it will not be the same as the original. Okay, you see how the colors are kept here, right? And then you see how this look. So if you were to make a tea with just a regular nettle, and then you make a tea with the fermented nettle, you're going to see that, one, it tastes different and it looks different. This one will be lighter. It might have more of a grassy flavor to it. This one will be darker. And depending on the length of time you let it ferment, the flavor, the taste of it might change a little bit.
how would you describe the difference flavor-wise?
This one, when it's fermented, I like it better when it's fermented. It has a, I want to say a darker flavor, but darker not in the sense of that it's strong. It is just the presence of it tend to stick out more, but not so much on a grassy level. So it has like a touch of tanginess to it.
It has like maybe more, like, yeah, I can see it, like when you just
Yeah.
boil leaves, you're like, okay, these taste like boiled leaves,
Yeah.
but then you've got something that's kind of changing the chemistry there and making it, okay, yeah, kind of have
so
like
it'll
maybe
be
a little bit
bit
of more of a heft. You
Yes,
know?
and it'll definitely be a little bit more tangy, give it a little kick. And you can do this with just about, with any herbs. But if I'm fermenting my herbs, right, I also want the beneficial bacteria. So now when it's time for me to make a tea, I'm not going to use hot water. If I use hot water, I'm killing the bacteria, right? And I'm just left with, you still get the benefit of the herbs, right? But I also want the bacteria because those bacteria gets to repopulate my microbiome. And your microbiome is where your bacteria live, right? And is also close to where your immune system is, all in the gut. And because of that, I want to continuously make sure that I'm keeping the good bacteria in my system continuously. So I'll do the fermented leaves, I'll do the pickling, the sauerkraut, right? All of these are just different way of doing it. So what you want to do is a cold infusion. So you will take your fermented leaf. Now, if you don't like loose leaves, things like that, then either put it in a tea bag or put it in those little ball thing that they have. I don't mind leaves floating around. I actually like to look at how they just envelop. So you'll just put your tea, you're in here, and then you'll take room temperature water or even cold water, put it in, right? And then set it to the side.
Here you go, Queen.
Yep.
Allow me.
Yep. And then you just set it aside, cover it so nothing else get in, right? And then just let it steep. How long should you let it steep? I let mine steep for a couple hours if I must have it right away. If not, I let it steep overnight so it can be a really strong tea. You can put it in the refrigerator or you can leave it on your table. But that is how you make fermented tea leaves, and it's just about anything. So another example of your fermented tea that you may not be aware of is black tea. Black tea is the same as green tea, same leaves, just different process, right? So I just wanted to share that with you guys so you can kind of like see the difference when you have a green tea and you make it, it looks different, it tastes different, but then when you make black tea, it looks different and tastes different. But when I say the exact same leaves, it's the exact same leaf from the same tree, okay, no difference. So that's it, guys. So I hope, did you guys get the chance to try it out with the black currant? What was the smell?
I know we tried it over here. I got pulverized. I think that smashing part really is really important. Because it's so dry, it's like frayed on us. We need to get that liquid.
Okay, yeah, the smash,
so
yeah.
necessary.
The smashing, yeah, that's what the smashing helps to do, is just kind of like keep expelling. But as it gets crushed and you get closer, you can kind of smell it a little bit more. But yeah, that's how you do it. It's just that simple, but you have to check. Another thing that can happen, right? So you can check and you might see like, oh, I'm seeing a little bit of dots, or I'm seeing a little furry thing, or whatever it is that you might see that's haven't taken over everything. You can remove those little, if it's not everywhere, just remove the one that's on, and you can either stop fermentation then or continue. But again, you'll have to put it back on the board and just kind of like mix everything all together all over again.
Which I think speaks to, that before you take this out and redo it every day, you're going to want to wash your hands. You're going to want to have a clean surface, right?
Yeah.
There are these ways in which you're not having to create a sterile place, but you do
Yes.
need to just practice some decent hygiene.
Absolutely.
And so, you want to make sure that you're not cross-contaminating this when you do it. It's so cool. I have never done this. I'm so excited that I just learned it.
Yeah. So when what she said about cross-contamination is really important, because we are messing around with bacteria. We are doing lacto fermentation. So we're looking for specific bacteria. We don't want the other bad bacteria, right? And we are covered in bacteria. Everything is covered in bacteria, right? So you don't want to add extra. That's why you want to make sure you clean your hand. That's why you want to make sure that the area that you're working in is clean, so that nothing else is there except for the bacteria that you do want. And that's it. Cool. Any questions?
Would adding some salt to help break down these be a bad idea?
Yes, because once you add the salt, I wouldn't say it's a bad idea. So no, I wouldn't say it's a bad idea. That'll just be a different technique, and that'll be something else, and that'll be something to try and experiment with, right? So just think of it like in terms of, if you're doing it in terms of an herb to use in tea, then it's going to also affect the flavor of the tea when you're making it. You know, you have like that little bit of saltiness to your tea. So that's the only thing to be mindful of when you do it like that. But if you're going to add salt, I will say then add the herb with whatever fermentation that you're doing, because the texture thing, again, that's why with these we don't add water, we don't add anything, because of that texture that we talked about earlier. It's going to change the whole thing, and you're not going to want to use it. It's like, what am I going to do with this? Nothing. So kind of just leave it be. But a lot of people use hot water, but they forget, like, you're killing the bacteria. For all of that, just keep it green and keep taking it that way. But I like it. And I do that with certain herbs. I like to do it with raspberry leaves. I like to do it with ginkgo leaves. I love doing it with nettle, because nettle is really, for me, it's really important because of the rich minerals and all the beneficial benefits that it already have prior to that. So yeah, so whatever herbs you like, please, by all means, try it out.
Cool.
Yeah.
Should we go back to our, oh yeah.
When the rolling process, like unlocking the juices, would it be better to have a less absorbent surface to roll on, like parchment paper or something, or
definitely have a less absorbent surface when you do that, because you don't want to lose, because you're not going to get, I mean, it's depend on the plant, but for the most part, they're not going to give you that much juice. There are exceptions to the rule for those plants that have a lot of water. I'm pretty sure if you really use, let's just say common violet, for example, it's slimy, it has all of that stuff to it. So it will have been a lot more. And even now with that slime, that's still fun. You just put everything in and it will all work out. Now, you can get jiggy with it too, okay? So you can go ahead and be like, okay, you know what? Pass me some of that. What was the...
Spice bush?
Yeah, you can get funky with it. You can just add some spice bush stuff to it.
No.
Oh, about to say it's not spice bush.
No. Oh no, I was just singing.
Yeah, you can just put it in and then mix it in together. I would have you could like add some turmeric powder. Like I wouldn't add fresh turmeric to this. I would add like some turmeric powder, whatever other spices, right? It's just to add flavor and other nutrients or property to the tea. So when it's dried and it's done and ready, it's like on another level, because all of this got fermented together and the smell and the taste got the chance to just really blend in really well. So
I can smell it already.
Right?
Yeah, I can smell it from here.
That's another thing you can do. So just experiment with it. That's another way, a different way of making teas, but it brings you a whole new set of flavor that you just would not be getting out there like that.
And it also makes it smaller to store. It occurs to me.
I like to do it small. I like to do them small only because I want to be able to use them. I'm trying not to be a hoarder. My daughter's telling me she's been calling me a hoarder recently. So I'm like, okay. So I'm trying not to, so small jars it is for me. So I can just use it all. Yep, that's it. So now we can kind of just go back to our sauerkraut and take care of that.
Okay.
And then we will be done.
I'll grab it for you.
Thank you.
Thank you.
If you're angry, that's a good time to do some fermentation, because you just get. But speaking of being angry and emotions, since I brought that up also, food, everything that we're doing, we're putting energy into it when you're cooking, when you're making things, right? The same way we talk about how the bacteria enhances, our own energy can enhance the food and everything that we're doing because there's energy to it. If I'm in a bad mood and I'm making things and I have all of these bad thoughts or whatever, it is my belief that I'm also transferring that into this because the memory this is going to hold is of my energy when I'm making it. If I'm happy and I'm singing and I'm having a good time, it's going to taste different. It just is. So you want to be mindful of that when you're making these types of things, mind your emotion, make sure you're in a good headspace because people are going to eat from it and you want to be that extra ingredient. Like you are also an ingredient in the things that you make. That's what I'm trying to get you to hear. Okay, so, look.
There we
See
go.
that?
That's what we're after.
Yes. This is what we want. Okay. And again, it shows the power of salt. Salt draws out water. It does. It does this really well. This is also just therapeutic and just touching it and squeezing it is like, oh, this makes me sleepy. It really does. All right, so now we're just gonna put in a jar. So I'm going to squeeze. I'm squeezing the juice out. All right, and I'm putting this in here.
I can try and smush for you.
Yeah.
Here's one instance where I like to use wide mouth jars because you can get your big old paws down in there to mush it down. But if you don't have a wide mouth jar, you can just try and really pack it.
Yep. So why am I squeezing the juice out and putting that in? Because the brine, I keep calling it juice, but it's really brine. Because we're gonna add the brine to it. If I just put it in just like that, it's not going to be covered in brine. We want it to be covered in brine. And then if it's not enough brine, then we're going to make brine to add to that. So we're hoping that there's enough juice here.
Oh, there's gonna be enough juice there.
And you really want to, pack it in there and make sure you press it down. Yeah, you got to pack it down, press it down, just like that. All right. That's it. And with cabbage, because you're taking the water out, it shrinks. So sometimes when you start, you might think like, oh, this is a lot. And then by the end, it's like, oh.
Yeah, facts. I've
All
had like
water.
whole cabbages and been like, oh man, this is gonna be a lot of, and then it's like one jar's worth. And you're like, oh, well, okay.
That just tells you that cabbage holds a lot of water.
I think we're kind of at max cap here.
Okay. Okay.
Do you want me to get you some more jars?
Yes.
Okay,
It's right here.
thank you. And so this is a good point. Something to talk about is, that we've talked about processes where we're working with air and processes where we're keeping air out, right? So aerobic, where we're working with air, and anaerobic processes where we're keeping it out. So with your tea there, you're allowing it to oxidize, right?
Yes.
You're putting a lid on that, but you're taking it out every day, you're exposing it to air, you're letting it kind of get that oxygen. In this situation, we're trying to create an anaerobic environment where this cabbage and carrot and turmeric is going to sit real nice and tight in here, and the liquid's going to go over top in order to create an environment where oxygen does not get in.
You don't want oxygen inside. Like, oxygen is the enemy in this situation. And I just like all of this technique because it shows you how we can use and manipulate different things, different elements to really make our food, Sometimes we need the air, the oxygen. Sometimes we don't.
Sometimes we want it for the first half and we don't want it for the second, or
Yeah.
inverse, you know? Oh, I've forgone our thing, but it's all right.
It's all right.
Mhm.
So as we're pushing down the ingredients, if we find that water is like finding itself, should we stop it or kind of just let it be?
Yeah, that'll be.
Yeah.
Because you're about to add more, you're gonna put it back, yeah.
Oh, cool.
Oh, perfect. Look at that.
That's awesome.
God, I love that.
That is awesome.
Bada bing, bada boom.
Okay, hold on.
You can put, I bet if you split that between the two, we got this. I believe in you.
Yeah.
Heck yeah.
Oh, yeah, we did.
Nope, I can't push that. Okay. That is a tightly
Okay,
packed
so
jar.
you can see this is the brine, all right, that we created without having to add no added water or anything like that. This is what salt was able to bring out.
So now you're gonna pour that in here, right?
Yeah.
Just a little bit, I suppose. I mean, it's
Yeah.
gonna filter through, I suppose.
Uh,
Do you want to, here, let's move to this one and let it kind of
mhm.
zhoosh down. And Journey, I don't know about you,
Mhm.
but one of the things I sometimes do when I'm processing my cabbage is I'll take a couple of the leaves off the outside of it and set those to the side so that I can put those over the top once we've got this filled, because you're going to want to be able to try and keep everything under the liquid. Yeah.
Yes. So with the cabbage, with the sauerkraut, once you make it, because we don't want air, right? And we don't want oxidation. We don't want anything with oxygen. Putting the cabbage, the leaf of the cabbage over, because what you want everything to be under, the brine. Like it has to be under the brine. Nothing can stick out. Like there's a little bit of sticking out, right? Wherever things are sticking out, it's gonna come in contact with air. It come in contact with air, we're gonna have some other forms of bacteria that's gonna colonize that area. So we wanna keep everything under. And when you put the cabbage top, right, over that, that's to help to ensure that you do that. Or if you wanna get fancy, then you can order those, they have like glass, round glass. You have it?
They're for my fermentation crock, but you can
Yes.
get ones that are basically like this, just small, that will fit inside particularly a wide mouth jar, and they will just sit down on top and hold everything under.
Yes.
You can also use a Ziploc bag with some change in it or some salt water in it and
Mhm.
stick that down on the top, and that'll keep it hold down, or a piece of wax paper
Yeah.
works.
So those are that's a must, because if not, you're going to go in and have some trouble. Okay.
Yes,
That's why you put salt water in the bag.
in case it opens. Yeah, I typically don't use the plastic bag method just because it gets funky, I find. But I was gifted some weights and they were a nice gift. They definitely, I think, like all these things, it's like when you first do it, you do it the like janky DIY way. And then when you discover that you're going to do it more, you're like, all right, it's time to up my game. I'm
Yeah.
going to get some proper weights, you know what I mean? Kind of things like that.
Yeah.
So if you find that you like doing these things, try the plastic bag method at first, or the cabbage leaf is really kind of very easy. And then if you're like, all right, I need these weights, then go ahead and make your little Etsy purchase. They're not that expensive.
Yeah. The good,
Yeah, you could probably use the shot glass. The trick is just that you need it to cover the whole surface area, because now that this is all chopped up, it's got all these little bits. And as this continues to ferment, it's going to have gases. So it's going to move. And so you really want to be able to kind of keep everything underneath that liquid.
That's important. That's the most important thing. And
let me see if there's any kind of like decent sized pieces in here we can use on the top.
Like mine, that would be fine, or would I have to put something to press it down?
You could just put your juice in there and you're good to go. You just want to make sure that you can kind of keep all that stuff from floating up to the top. But the other thing to know is that like if some stuff floats to the top, it's going to be fine. You can just pull it out. Like if it starts to get funky, you can pull those things out. And we're actually, going to talk about like when good ferments go bad here in a minute. But like you can always just remove anything that kind of comes up off the top. If you notice that it starts to grow some white mold, you can pull that out. Like there's a larger margin for error here than a lot of people think.
yes. And that's the good thing, because once you are working with bacteria, you become more comfortable and less fearful of them. And you're like, oh, yeah, I see some growing on it, but it didn't take over my whole thing. I can just remove that one piece and don't think like, oh my God, is my whole thing bad? Am I going to get sick and all of these things? So you have a lot of room for error with these things. And the more you do it, the more you get comfortable, the more you also start to have your own little
Tricks. Methods.
Yes.
Yeah, actually, I wanted to bring that up because, yesterday I was chatting with someone and they were like, oh, I've always been so scared of fermentation, botulism. And it's funny that we all kind of just automatically jump to this thing that statistically kills far less people every year than like, oh, I don't know, name a lot of things, guns, we're very terrified of this thing. I actually just read in The Art of Fermentation this morning, someone from the USDA, Sandra Katz quotes, is like, no one has ever died from lacto fermentation. Like it is not a situation where botulism comes into play because you've created a salt-based environment. It cannot live there, right? Yes. That is an issue when you're canning and when you're canning low acid foods, which we're not talking about today. We would love to host a workshop with someone who's actually like a pressure canner. I can hot water can, I can't pressure can.
Oh, you don't pressure can?
I'm scared. I'm scared of pressure cookers. And so, because they can explode.
They can be intimidating.
Yeah, I'm working on it. But like, this is where like, all of these things kind of get lumped into this one category and people are like, oh, but botulism, lacto fermentation, you're going to be fine. You're going to be fine.
Yeah, that has nothing to do with botulism. It's something entirely different that's specific to canning. So, but with this, that brine, it's not going to do anything. Now, your sauerkraut, even within the next couple of days, it'll be ready for you to use it if you feel like, you know what, I like it at this stage. So what that means is that as it's fermenting, smell it, taste it to see like, yeah, I like it just like this. And once you are ready and you say, this is the one that I like, then that's when you're going to stop the fermentation and you can put it in the refrigerator and then you'll be good to go. So on day 2, on day 3, on day 4, you can start to use your sauerkraut.
Or you can let it go for months.
Yep.
And it also, like we were talking about with brewing, it's going to be temperature contingent. So right now we're in the fall, it's sweater weather. You can leave this out in your house and it's going to ferment for longer. If it's 95 degrees and you don't have AC like I don't, fermenting in the middle of summer is going to go real quick and it's going to get funky faster. Yes. Not funky bad, just funky different. And so like you want, there are all these kinds of contexts that you have to keep in mind when you're doing these sorts of processes.
I'm going to use that.
Not funky bad, just funky different.
Yeah, it was like, I smell something. Even if it smells like, you know what, that's funky, but that's funky different.
Yeah.
Not funky bad.
Maybe that's what will be on my tombstone. They were funky bad, not funky. Well, they were funky different, not funky bad. Are you ready for me to put this on here?
Yeah. Yeah.
Oop. All right, we're a little over full, but you know what? We tried. So you might recognize these because we used something very similar when we were doing, yeah, we probably want to empty those a little bit, but they'll work for now. You get the idea. Much like we did with fermentation last week, we've put an airlock on it so that as it continues to create gas,
Right. So as it's creating the gas, the bubble, bloop, 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 and then it can kind of exit out. So that's the point of having this, to ensure that, you know, we don't have to keep opening to burp it or anything like that. The gas gets the chance to escape without oxygen coming in.
and so now you set these somewhere cool and dark.
Yes, cool and
And
dark.
what gonna do?
Everything grows in the dark. So you're gonna keep this in the cool, in the dark, and just check it to see when you're ready for it. Again, it's all preference. It's your taste, is whatever you want. You can let it go on for months, or you can let it go on for a couple of days, a couple of weeks, totally up to you. This is a really good way to preserve food and ensure that you're getting in your probiotics. Like if you don't want to take the probiotic pill, make your own probiotics. This way, you know for sure there are some bacteria in there, right? So
For sure.
how you guys doing?
Good, awesome.
Oh, it's looking good.
Lovely.
Look at that. Oh, yeah.
So is that top like a plus or is it a necessary? Like,
Oh, it's a plus. It's definitely a plus.
do without it?
You can absolutely do it without it. So you can even not even have a lid like this. You can actually leave it open and just put like some cheesecloth or something over it so that bugs don't get in it. Again, really what matters is that everything's staying in that anaerobic environment under the water. This just makes it a little bit easier.
Yeah.
Again, it's like the next step once you've done it once. I remember the first time I made sauerkraut, it was just like in a jar, cheesecloth, boom.
Yeah.
And then, you know, after you've done that a couple of times and you've had friends come over and be like, what smells? You're like, I'm going to get an airlock. You know what I mean? So that I can kind of keep this, so I can keep my Yankee Candle Company situation going here.
Yes.
And, you know, just to kind of show you, like thinking about like upping your game, for the holiday season, my partner got me this fermentation crock. Same idea, right? So it came with these cool weights. Boop, boop, boop. I just actually last night pulled these pickles. They're my first round of lacto fermented pickles that I made in this crock. So these are got garlic scapes and cucumbers, and I actually put some oak leaves in there to help. Oak leaves are often used to help kind of maintain that crunch. I hate a soggy pickle. I want a crunchy pickle.
Yeah, they have a lot of tanning, so I can see.
So I put oak leaves and garlic scapes and, you know, black pepper and some chili powder and all that stuff. I stuck it in there. I made a brine. I put these weights on it. It sat there. You put a little bit of water in this rim. So it's making the airlock, right? So then the gas comes out. It doesn't, nothing comes in. I've had this in my fridge since I made them at some point this summer. They taste great and fine.
I
They're good to go.
love these because what you can do too, right? You can create yourself a collection of bacteria, you know, by just reusing the pot, but you're not washing it, right? So reusing it will mean like, okay, you made one thing, then you put on the next thing, but you're continuously just using the bacteria that's already there. So even the flavor and enhancement over time, years, decades, there are families where they have generation of using those type of crock pot and not washed, right? Just changing it, but it's so powerful because you have years and an extensive amount of good bacteria just floating in here. It's kind of like how people will do with when you fry bacon and they'll save the bacon grease because it has all of these flavors, and then they have like these jars and just keep dumping the bacon grease.
I got one of those. Yeah, I got one of those.
So the concept here is the same. It enhances your food differently. So like this is a great family tradition. It's like, hey, this got bacteria from when great grandma was around. So it's like,
I love it.
passing it down. I mean, that's how we pass down bacteria too. That's why, when you do vaginal birth, the baby passing through gets their first set of bacteria from passing through. And when you have C-section, the baby miss out on those beneficial bacteria because that's what's going to be their builder for their microbiome. So this is another way family can pass on bacteria without going through the vaginal canal.
Amazing.
But yeah, this is
how you lacto ferment.
Yeah.
So then if you were going to want to do the next step, like, okay, you've put this in the fridge, but let's say you make a whole bunch of sauerkraut, right? You could learn how to water bath can it. You would be killing the bacteria in that process. You and I were actually talking the other day because my partner's family is Pennsylvania Dutch, and my mother-in-law and all of her sisters like to get together and make this like huge batch of sauerkraut, and then they store it in the freezer. And I've always thought like, that seems like counterintuitive. And you brought up a good point that like, it's actually probably better than canning it because you're just putting it to sleep.
Yes.
And then when you pull it back out, all that bacteria can come back
up. Exactly. So, you're putting in a refrigerator, you're putting in your freezer, you just halting and bringing fermentation to stop because the bacteria, what happens in the cold, we kind of like move slow and, freeze. So that's what happened. If you want them back active, you put them back out, they warm up, there's plenty of food for them to feed that's in there, then they're back active again. So that's really a good way to do it. We didn't do this today, but this is something you guys can actually look up and even do it yourself, like a ginger bug. If you make a ginger bug, you can use that to make natural soda. I think we've talked about it a little bit last time, but yeah, you guys if you put ginger bug up on YouTube or anywhere on Google, you're going to have all these amazing, it's a really basic recipe, but when it's ready, you just use that, add it with whatever drink that you like, whether it's a tea or a syrup, the same step that you showed us with the ale, which is
apples, or the wild ferment.
Leave it out for a little bit. And then once it's ready, put it in the refrigerator and you'll have an amazing natural flavored soda.
So let's talk about when good ferments go bad. Are we going to show our Hall of Shame?
Yes.
Okay.
Yes. You can't do this and not, come in contact with the other bacteria. Oh, it's going to happen.
It's going to happen. And look, we're about to be really brave and show you things that most people wouldn't show you. So things to look out for. Sometimes you're going to have your cute little jar of sauerkraut, and you're going to notice that some white stuff is going to start to happen on the surface of the water. It might look a little stringy. It might look like little spots. It's called KAHM, KAHM. It's a yeast. Stay calm. It's just calm.
Yeah.
The only thing you need to worry about is if it turns black, if it turns green, if it turns pink. If it is white, if there's something white on there and it's freaking you out, just scrape it off and go about your day.
It does, though, affect the taste of it. It does.
You think cotton yeast does?
Yes, it does. Like when I make my ginger bug, and my ginger bug that doesn't have the cotton yeast in there tastes different than the one that does.
Oh, okay.
You can remove it. What I do is once I see if you don't want it there, you can kind of just remove it, and that's fine. Or you can also switch jars. You can also switch jar after you remove whatever, just switch jars, because sometimes that yeast, you may remove it, but it's still hanging on the jar, right? You can't see it because we don't have that those type of eyes, but it's hanging on a jar, and then you just get right back in, and then you come back a couple of days, you're like, oh, I thought I removed you.
I mean, it's going to be there, like you're living in an environment full of all kinds of things growing around you. And the things to look for is to make sure that you don't have something that's starting to grow and sporulate that's going to contaminate the rest of it. As long as everything you're going to eat is under that water and you just pull whatever's on top off, you're good, my friend.
And
you're
the smell, smell it, because your sense of smell will let you know if something has gone bad. You smell it's like, oh, it still smells good, then it's fine. But if you smell it, what something that is moldy. Well, by now, I don't know if you know, but I'm hoping that you do know what a bad smell is. And if you don't know, fermentation can help you with it. That's why it's important for you to smell your stuff before it starts to ferment. So like once fermentation starts and you smell, it's like, oh, it does smell different than originally. Now you know, okay, this is a fermenting smell. And when something smells bad, right, remember that smell, because over time, what will happen to you once you develop that sense of smell, and with this, you can smell something and you're like, oh, this is starting to ferment. The smell may not be strong, but you're picking up on that fermentation. And it's like, yes, this is definitely starting to ferment. You may not taste it, you may not smell it, you may not taste it or see it, but it helps with that. If something goes bad, you can also pick up the scent of something bad before it takes over your whole entire thing. So allow this process to really train yourself. Be the child, be curious, ask a bunch of questions, taste it, smell it, look at it. If you like magnifying glasses and you have all those extra gadgets, shoot, go under the thing, look at it. I mean, it's fun.
All right, you ready?
Yes.
Okay, so mine requires a little explanation. What's yours? Let's see, what is it?
So,
oh yeah, that's good.
Originally I have made some peach infused vinegar using apple cider vinegar. It was peach infused. It was great. I was just like, yes. And then I actually left a little bit of it inside here because I didn't have enough space in whatever jar that I put the stuff in. And over time, a mother started to form and it was nice and thick. I was just like, yes, I hit jackpot. I was so happy about it, but I got caught up in life outside of nature and forgot all about it and didn't take good care of it. And then now it's the mother of other things.
Succession
it's
has
the
occurred.
mother of other things that
Yeah.
you don't want. So I don't know if you guys can actually see it, but I want to show you guys what this looks like. I keep it because I always like to show what you don't want. Okay, that's a no-no. You see that? You don't taste it, you don't mess around with it. It's just kind of like, oh, get to know it. You guys can.
Similarly, last year at the park, we grew a bunch of sunchokes. And last fall, we harvested all the sunchokes and I wanted to save them for an event. I had 2 little jars that I lacto fermented. I ate those. They were delicious. And then I had this big jar that I was saving to hopefully do an event last winter. Well, COVID got bad again. It was not a time to have an event. This sat in the back of my refrigerator, made this crazy mother that's quite scary. I actually can't, oh God, heaven help us. Yeah, so you see that? That is like gray, green mold. That is not what you want.
Yeah.
Answer no. Answer no, that's not what you want. That's bad. Don't do that. I will be disposing of this later.
So this is what you don't want, right? If this was a good mother, none of this, it wouldn't look like this, that color, it just wouldn't be like that.
And chances are at one point it was.
Yeah.
And I also know that I, for a while, had it without a piece of tape over this. So I think it just got a little bit more oxygen than it should have done. And probably at some point this winter, it probably had a cool mother on it, a good mom, a nice mommy.
It started good.
Yeah. And then other things took over and now it is a bad mommy and it must go away. I guess, but hey, this is how you learn, right?
I guess all bad mommies started as good mommy at some point. Right?
Just take circumstances.
There you go.
So,
any questions?
Yeah. Yes.
I just love how the both of you conveniently have bad mothers.
Yeah. Yeah. We were like, oh, how are we going to show them what a bad example is? She was like, oh, I got one. And I was like, I got one too.
Literally.
So, and I think one of the things is you like hold on to it because you're like, it becomes like it's curious, right? You're like, wow, what is it? I wonder. I'm gonna have to deal with it at some point.
Yeah, because you don't encounter it until you do. And me, I wanted to preserve the mother because then when it comes down to making homemade from scratch vinegar, right? Instead of going through all of this process, I can just take a piece of the mother, put it in there, I'm good to go.
Yeah.
You know, that's why I wanted it. And I was just like, ooh, but then it was my fault because I didn't take care of mother. I didn't take care of mother, so I was a bad daughter. You know, but that's okay. That's okay. I keep my bad mother, so you know I'm not that bad.
I'm
No.
sorry.
No.
Oh, what was your question?
Is calm.
Is calm like different type of yeast? That's a great question.
Yeah.
I don't know.
Yeah, but no, it's not mother. Mother is it's mother doesn't see when calm comes in later, right? Has to do with the environment and everything else. But the mother is being formed from everything that's already there, beneficial bacteria from the start. You know, and it starts to it's kind of like all of the bacteria just kind of blub together and just keep coming back together, and it's getting bigger and bigger and bigger and bigger into like a big old glob of jelly. And that's like a community of however many bacteria. That's how the mother starts to form. And again, if air hits it, you know, it's like opening the doors for a whole new set of different types of bacteria that is not friendly to us. And they come in and it was like, hey, and then take over. And then that's it. It's just done deal.
Yeah. It's kind of amazing how microbes can do this, right? They create these biofilms, these quorums, right? Where they come together and they can create this object. If only we could work in such good consensus as they do.
You know, when you say they create biofilm, it's like biofilm works great for them because they use them as a protective shield. You know what I mean? If you can't break through the biofilm, sometimes you can't get to the bacteria. So if you have like that bacteria in your mouth and you have a lot of biofilm and things like that, breaking that down, it's great because if you don't break it down, the bacteria is like, yep, I see what you're doing, but you can't get over here. I'm right here hiding in the cup, hiding in my own little bubbles, and you're not getting through there. So it's really important to know this. And always remember, the way the bacteria you guys are seeing it working on the outside, even with the bad mothers, right? They work the exact same way inside of us. That's why it's important that you feed your right bacteria, because all of these things is really about taking care of them, feeding them. You don't take care of the mother, you get that. You have microbiome inside of you, you don't take care of your microbiome, right? You're going to get a whole bunch of bad bacteria. You feed them the things that promotes the bad bacteria. You create an environment that promotes the life of the bad bacteria, then you're going to find yourself with a whole bunch of things, candida, all kinds of health issue and digestive issue. You feed them right, and you keep getting the different fermentation thing to keep repopulating yourself with the right one, you will see that over time, you have a stronger resistance to diseases. Like it really makes you more resistant to a lot of things because bacteria, when I say they're everywhere, they're everywhere. It's not something that we can get rid of. We can survive and live our life without bacteria. So make friends with them through fermentation. And then if you have your own bad mother, share with us. You know, we can have our own little group.
Bad mom parade.
You know.
Before we wrap up, I wanted to shout out some books. You know, we had mentioned this one last week that's really good for learning about vinegars. So the fermentation kind of goes also to that.
Yeah.
I also wanted to shout out Marie Viljean's beautiful foraging cookbook that I really recommend. Has awesome cocktail ideas, really cool vinegars and stuff that she makes. Sandra Katz, kind of considered like the dawn of the fermentation world. This book is great. I mean, we have just scratched the surface. This book will talk about how you make koji, tempeh, miso. I mean, shout out if you really want to get high end about it. There's the Noma book, which is yet again, my family all get me fermentation stuff for Christmas. This is, you know, Danish people, they do crazy things. It's very cool. And then if you're wanting to start to learn about canning, the next step, hot water bath canning, or even just preserving in general, I find this book really helpful. It's what helped me start doing hot water bath canning.
Put them up.
And it has a lot of nice recipes. When you're canning, you have to follow a recipe.
Yes.
for real.
But let me just put this out there. Go ahead and do that.
Well, this one I was just going to say, fermentation goes beyond even what we eat. I actually just got this book in the mail this week. This is about how to ferment compost teas and plant juices and things for growing your plants and making your plants as healthy as they can be. So we can ferment for the planet.
Even the plants love, fermented tea. Like you give plants, fermented teas and you're just like, oh, what's happening? The plant is like, oh, I love it. Because they also depend on the bacteria. So what I wanted to say, just to touch on upon canning, for those of you who can, one thing you want to do is you want to make sure that the recipe that you're following is up to date as in this time, right? The reason being is that if you're following recipes from the 1950s and 1940s and all this stuff, those are great recipes that are using vinegar when during that time, the acidity, the level of those vinegar were much higher than the vinegar that we have today, which is just 5% acid. Right, 5% acid. The old ones, higher percent, right? A lot more. So if you're following that and you're like using your vinegar, thinking like you're doing it right, you might have to deal with botulism because your acid level is not where it needs to be. So make sure it is an updated one from this time with the knowledge of, because it takes into account the acidity. Yeah, the acidity level of today's time. It's not like the one from the old time. So please, please, please make sure that you double check that. It's really important or you're going to be upset.
I see a class on canning in our future. I can't wait for you to teach me how to pressure can. I'll do the hot water bath. You do the pressure can.
Cool.
All right. Deal.
Yes.
White vinegar, white wine vinegar.
How do you make white wine vinegar?
There were questions
Yes.
Ah.
at the beginning.
Oh,
Yes. Do we have an answer?
does anybody?
Do you have an answer? Anybody?
Come on, Kate.
You
how do
talked
make
about
white
it
wine
earlier.
vinegar?
How do you just think about it? White wine vinegar.
There you go.
There you go.
There you go.
That is every time you're buying red wine vinegar, white wine vinegar. Literally, what happened is like make a bunch of wine, and it's like, okay, we're not going to get rid of this wine, so turn them into vinegar and then ship them out. Sometimes places where they make wine, if there's a wine you don't like, oh, this wasn't good, turn it into vinegar. So you can also buy your favorite wine if you like and turn it into a vinegar. And it's like, I have my little whatever, but that is how red wine, white wine, vinegar is made. It's just regular wine, popped up, let it sit out for a bit, and this is it.
Boom. Cool.
Yeah.
Thank you all so much. Here, do you want me to hand you this?
Sure. Thank you so much, Candace and Journey, for this workshop and for participants for y'all coming through and making your own sauerkraut today. This was really exciting. Thank you for tuning in virtually, those that are and who are reviewing this recording after the fact. I hope that you are exploring these kind of fermentations along with us. Join us next weekend as we talk about wild seasoning and touch upon some of the ingredients we even used today in these recipes.
Oh yeah, definitely check next week. It's gonna be fun. The seasoning that we're gonna bring to you guys and share with you guys is not seasoning that you guys are used to. So it's definitely gonna add a nice flavor. This is the holiday season section of the year. So to bring something to the family that they never had before will be kind of cool. So check us out, whether it's live or in person, just come on. Yes.
Thank you again,
Thank you.
Journey, Candace.
My pleasure.
We'll see y'all next time. Thank you, Tatiana, behind the scenes,
Yes.
holding it down.
All right.
All right, talk soon.
Thank you guys.